It is 3
This meeting is being recorded.
o'clock. We're going to call the meeting of the Environmental Resources Committee to order. We'll start with item number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to item number 3, public comment. I don't see anybody signed up on the sheet here, so we'll continue moving on here to item number 4, approval of the May 30th, 2023 committee minutes. It was a pleasure of the group here. Motion by Scherfinski, second by Ritter to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Move on to 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. Public hearings, review, possible actions, and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. County zoning changes. Before we go too much farther, we have 2 today, I believe, correct? Okay. So I would just ask that everybody please mute your phones, or if you're joining us electronically, please mute yourself if you're joining us over WebEx. Marathon County ERC is now meeting a public hearing on the location plan specifications and purpose of the following projects. 1, Tim Verlin on behalf of George Harvanek, personal representative Joyce Harvanek, rural estate to rural residential town of Gunther. And 2, Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Randy and Sarah Martin, general agriculture to rural residential town of Frankfurt. Are those the 2 we have? That's correct. Okay, because I see 3 on here. So members of the committee present, myself, Supervisor Langenhahn, Supervisors Drabeck, Seefeld, Bensky, Randy Roskoff, our citizen representative from Park Service Agency, Supervisors Ritter, Unger, Oberbeck, Scherfinski, and Marilyn Ben, who is our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association representative. We also have members of staff which will assist us with the hearing this afternoon. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. Committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. Committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinance or state laws, must apply the laws as written. Purpose of the committee is to hear and decide and propose ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. Committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third interested may appear. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orally discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are recommendation to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. And we'll proceed to the public hearings at this time. Like I said, staff will help us conduct those hearings. So we'll start with 5A1. Tim Verlin on behalf of George Harvanek, personal representative of Joyce Harvanek, rural estate to rural residential town of Gunther. And we will begin with Garrett, who will present our staff report. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead. Thank you.
All right, this is George Harvanek, petition to rezone land, staff report June 27th, 2023, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owner is George Harvanek, residing at 477 Old Highway 51, Mosney, Wisconsin, 54455. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on Camp Road, just west of the intersection of Camp Road and Jones Valley Road. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of George Harvanek, personal representative of Joyce Harvanek, to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Code to rezone lands from RE Rural Estate to RR Rural Residential, as described as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 19076, located in the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 8 and the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 17. Township 26 North, Range 8 East, Town of Gunther. The area to be rezoned to rural residential is described as Lot 1 and Lot 2 of preliminary CSM, parent parcel number as listed. Public hearing, the Town of Gunther Town Board met on June 12th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, June 27th, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Have the existing zoning districts and map. The proposed zoning district is rural residential. Town recommendation on June 12th, 2023, the Town of Gunther Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Very good. Okay, any questions for staff? Being hearing none. Thank you, Garrett. Okay, now I have two individuals here on this list. I'm just going to say, I always recommend, it's not a requirement, but it's better to take the couple seconds that it takes to be sworn in. That way, if there are questions from members of the committee, that way you're available for questions. We can't ask questions from the public unless you're sworn in. It takes a couple seconds to do. So, is anybody here to speak in favor of 5A1 Tim Vreeland on behalf of George Harvinek?
Jacob, we do have Joe Vreeland online if there are questions for him.
Okay. Joe, do you mind if I swear you in quickly? Oh, it's Tim? It is Tim? Tim?
Yes,
Tim,
I'm here.
Do you mind if I swear you in quickly?
Sure,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. So do you have anything you want to provide, Tim?
Just that I attended the meeting with the town, and they did approve the certified survey map and the rezone. The lot size does match what they require, so everything looked good to them.
Okay. Any questions for Tim? All right. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone 5A1, seeing and hearing none. Anybody that wishes to speak against the proposed rezone 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to the proposed rezone 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. One and final call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested in the proposed rezone 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as how no one else wishes to testify on the matter of 5A1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of George Harvinek, personal representative Joyce Harvinek, rural estate to rural residential town of Gunther, I am now declaring the public hearing now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. I believe a motion to approve would be in order. Supervisor Shafinsky?
I will make a motion based on the approval of staff, or recommendation of the staff, recommendation from the town board.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor. I will make a motion based on approval of the staff, approval of the town board, recommendations of finding of fact and conclusion of law that we approve.
Okay. Motion's made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Back to Garrett for 5A2, Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Sandy and Sarah Martin, General Ag to Rural Residential, Town of Frankfurt.
All right, this is Randy and Sarah Martine, petition to rezone land, staff report, June 27, 2023, Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Christopher Schumacher at 235-619 North 108th Ave, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54401. Property owner is Randy and Sarah Martine, residing at 116703 Huckleberry Road, Edgar, Wisconsin, 54426. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Huckleberry Road, just west of the intersection of Huckleberry Road and Butternut Road. The petition of Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Randy and Sarah Martine to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to RR Rural Residential located in part of the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 14, Township 28 North, Range 3 East, Town of Frankfurt. Area to be rezoned to RR Rural Residential is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel number as listed. Public hearing, the Town of Frankfurt Town Board met on June 12, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, June 27, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. The existing zoning district is general agriculture. The proposed zoning district is rural residential. On June 12, 2023, the Town of Frankfurt Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff should recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, any questions for Garrett? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on, I think it's page 25 and down on D. Now I just lost my spot. But under after the question, it says the parcel does have any wetlands or floodplains. It's right by Hammond Creek. I'm just wondering if it has a wetland or does not. It's just hard to tell there.
I would have to look at the GIS again. The area that is going to be rezoned is not affected by wetland or floodplain. It's out in the field toward that northeast corner, up by the road.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Garrett. Okay, public testimony. We'll go to 5A2. Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Randy and Sarah Martine, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Frankfurt. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please either approach the microphone or unmute yourself at this time over WebEx.
And we do have Chris Schumacher, the surveyor, here, if there are questions for him as well.
So, who am I looking at here? Chris, do you mind if I swear you in real quick? Thank you. So just raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Oh, state your name, please.
Chris Schumacher.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Chris? Okay. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
I can confirm that on the lot, there is no wetlands on that.
Oh,
So the remnant does, but not the lot that we're rezoning.
okay. Thank you. All right. I'll call once. I guess I'll call once more. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one time for anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone for 5A2. Seeing hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, one and final call. Please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for 5A2, Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Randy and Sarah Sarah Martine, general agriculture to rural residential town of Frankfurt. I am now declaring the public hearing closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Again, I think a motion to approve would be in order. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Randy and Sarah Martine from general agriculture to rural residential based on the finding and facts from the staff and the conclusions of law.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Shafinsky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are on to item 5A3, updates to Chapter 16 and Chapter 19 of the Marathon County General Code Parks and Forestry. Do I have to swear in here for these or no? No?
This update doesn't require a public hearing.
Cool.
So.
Okay, thanks. All right, Jamie.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So we, once a year, usually bring forward some ordinance updates to our parks and our forestry chapter. And we have a few changes going on with some of the things that we're allowing within the forest or the park. So I do have, these did go to Forestry Rec Committee this afternoon as well as the Park Commission this afternoon. So I do have, when we get to the park, Chapter 19, I have one change, wording change that we need to make that adjustment from based on their recommendation today. But going through, we sent these to Corporation Counsel, so he did review these, and so some of it in these ordinances is just some housekeeping items and some verbiage. But looking at Chapter 16 first, because I believe that's first in your packet, the first major change is looking at items 17, 18, and 19 are the items that we're here to update today. Item 17 in Chapter 16 is animals on ski trails. This we just had to clarify designated trails versus any trail. We had that challenge a few months ago from someone who didn't want dogs allowed on any trails in 9 Mile. And per county forest, we can't restrict that use, but we can restrict it on designated groom trails in which we spend time and money and use our equipment on. But other trails, just because someone goes out and makes a snowshoe trail or a cross-country ski trail doesn't mean it is a ski trail that we feel is a designated ski trail. So we clarified that, just say designated or being groomed for opening. And then number 18, so the Forestry Recreation Committee today made a motion to add fat tire biking as a permanent use out at winter fat tire biking, I should clarify, as a permanent use out at 9 Mile County Forest. Beginning this fall, we did a trial season this last year, and we had a lot of feedback, very positive feedback. All of it you can find in the Forestry Rec Committee packet if you're interested in it, or I can send it to you. But they did make that motion to move it forward, so 18 is adding fat tire bikes and snowshoes to the list of where we do not want people walking on, because of the very reason too that snowshoes and skis and fat tire bikes, if they're groomed for that use, do little damage to those trails once someone is walking with boots on groomed trails that have been spent with machines to do. There's divots and there's opportunity for hurting somebody if they were to hit that divot, and it ruins the trail that is meant for those uses. There's a lot of other uses or trails out in the forest and in our other areas where people can walk, but if they're using specific trails that are groomed for those uses that people pay the pass fees for, then they can't walk on those. And then we added some definitions because a fat tire bike is specific. It does have to have 3.8 inches of tire or wider. We don't allow other mountain bikes with smaller tires during the winter. That's not what that was used for. And then we just defined snowshoe, so we wanted to make that clear. And that's the definition that we found online. So it's a very simple one.
Could I ask a question here?
Yeah.
So for item 18, I did read the public comments, and there was a couple of comments made about signage and how that was impacting the users.
Yes, so that was part of the motion today by the Forestry Recreation Committee, is if they approve this as a designated season, that it comes with improved signage for not only fat tire bikes, which we have to add, but also snowshoe. And I do have an Eagle Scout that I got as of yesterday who's willing to do the signage for the snowshoe trail. for us, and it came with a donation from the group that uses it for snowshoe to help pay for the signs. They also made a stipulation for improved maps, so we'll improve our maps that are online with a new website that comes out. And there was one more. Oh, the updated website
Okay.
to make sure that's more accessible. So all of that is part of the motion from the Forestry Rec Committee today.
Okay. Supervisor Shafinsky?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to hear, Jamie, that you're addressing signage and maps. We were out there last January, and quite honestly, it's awful. It is so out of date. You can't. What is out there isn't even accurate. So, hopefully, by this next winter, we'll have made a lot of progress and made it a little bit more navigable.
Yes, that is our goal.
Yeah, continue.
Okay, and then the last item on there is the designation for the Bitsky Bird Walk that's out in the Harrison Hewlett. I think it's the county forest. It was a DNR designation that had these stipulations of the no hunting during these times. That designation of that wetland has been lifted, so it's not a. And I think Tom is on listening, so he might correct my verbiage here of what the DNR had Bitsky Bird Walk listed as, but this did go through the Forestry Recreation Committee as well, and because people do enjoy this trail out there, even though it's not a protected waterfowl area, they did feel that we should restrict any hunting within that birdwalk area to allow patrons to continue to use it through year round. So it's what is on the sign out there is what's in the ordinance. It's just what was on the sign out there was restricted from DNR, no longer DNR policy, but now a county choice by the Forestry Recreation Committee. And Tom, I guess before I move on to chapter 19, did I miss anything?
Nope, that is right. It was a waterfall, designated as a waterfall area by the DNR, and they lifted that. And if we needed to create an ordinance that we have created or we're going to create to maintain no hunting during that time.
So any other questions on chapter 16? All right, so chapter 19 is the parks ordinance. Also, there are some items that the Corporation Council added for housekeeping. One of the bigger items that's being added is in section 1903, section 8. So prior to me coming here 5 years ago, the previous parks director did take the smoking ordinance through both the city and the county for no smoking in some designated areas. It was approved by both entities. However, it was put in the city ordinances, but not necessarily the county ordinances. Our current county ordinances do cover everything that's added to this park section. And I forget what section that is, but we do have that designated where the county administrator too can designate areas. That's where our facilities are designated no smoking and includes our playgrounds. The one area that when I talked with our corporation council is I wanted to see, are we okay with that designation that's in our current county code? Or can we add this to the park section just to make it clear to people because our current section in the county code doesn't add the 50 feet area, it just has the facilities. So part of my goal is being both overseeing the city and the county park system is trying to make a lot of the ordinances very similar. And so he recommended we add this section to mirror that of the cities that just says the no smoking in these areas that are listed below or within 50 feet. Most of these facilities are already listed as no smoking because by signage, which is approved within our county code. This just makes it more clear if someone's looking up our park rules because they wouldn't know where to look for the other section. Any questions on that one?
I'm guessing that based on 8A through F, there wouldn't be any concerns, like if somebody wanted to light a cigarette in a campground or something like that?
Correct. They're not included in here unless we were to designate those areas by signage that we wouldn't allow them. But as of right now, campgrounds wouldn't be included.
Okay.
No.
Supervisor Shafinsky? Oh.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. I have a concern about this 50 feet designation, partly because I look at that and I go, okay, you draw a line, let's just take a playground. random playground somewhere, you have the boundaries of the park area. You say within 50 feet, now you're on somebody else's property. You know, potentially from wherever the line is. You understand what I'm getting at?
Not really, no, sorry.
Are you saying, Supervisor Stravinsky, that if there was like parkland that bordered another like private property and if like the campground, the edge was at 49 feet, right? Back and then.
Or you have a park and it's, you know, the park ends, you know, you have private property or somebody else's property on the other side of the line. Now that 50 feet encroaches on their private property.
Sure.
Potentially. So that would be one concern. And I guess I find all of these to be well-meaning, but let's not forget, until somebody does something otherwise, smoking is still actually a legal activity. So let's be a little bit cautious about just how restrictive we get. But I guess my concern is that 50-foot, and if we be.
So to clarify, these ordinances only pertain to city or county parks. It would not pertain to public property if it were to overlap. It would only pertain to the park area. This is our park chapter ordinance of the county.
So when you say overlap, though, do you mean the 50? Because if that 50 feet range would go over a property line, right? Like that
Yeah,
wouldn't.
but this doesn't restrict the rights of a public property. It only regulates the rules
Private
within.
property.
That's what I meant.
Yep.
Sorry. Yep. It only
you're good.
regulates the rules within the public park.
Yep.
So it would be to the edge of the property is where you couldn't smoke. Once you
Yep.
get over the edge, it's private property,
Yep.
and this does not regulate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And as far as these regulations, like I said, it's already codified in our county code. It's just making it clear in the park section to mirror that of the cities. And when this was put through by the previous director, there was a lot of information collected from the health department and numerous agencies when this was proposed and approved back then. So this is more of a housekeeping item to get it into we had questions regarding this when it came to the Hmong Festival at the sports complex. And so that is what triggered us to make it clear in the park section versus just keeping the language in the other county area. And you walked in at a perfect time when we're talking about the smoking part. So he can answer any questions too on that. But
Okay.
that's what triggered to put this in the park section.
Okay. Any other questions here? All right.
All right, we have one more pretty big item, and Mr. Seifelt can maybe help me with this, because this is where I have some changes to the language that's in front of you. But this is section 1907 under animals, item 6. So we had a discussion at Park Commission this afternoon for allowing an archery hunt in Big O Plain Park. Currently, our county ordinances do not allow hunting in the parks for very good reason. But Big O Plain has been a topic of discussion for many years. We actually, too, have put up deer exclusion areas when we do forestry work or timber sales out there to try to look at the impacts of the deer browse on forest regeneration. So we have, in the Park Commission packet, there are a number of pictures from 2017 through 2022 of where you can very well see the impact of the trees inside of the enclosure are growing. The vegetation is thriving. Everything outside of the deer exclosure area is mowed down, pretty much. It's eaten. So we do have quite a large deer population in Big O Plain. We also have had numerous emails from the property owners adjacent, because Big O Plain, there's one way in and one way out. It's water on 3 sides and land and woods to the north. So the property owners to the north have had extensive crop damage over the last number of years. And they have pleaded with us for a while to have this discussion. It finally came 4 years. It finally came to discussion today. We worked with the DNR biologist on what options we had. And one of the suggestions that came out of it was that we do have this ability to have an archery hunt there to try to control the deer population for a number of things. One is to reduce the crop damage to the neighboring neighbors. Two is to help to reduce the potential spread of disease, because when your deer population gets too high, then you have a higher potential for disease. And we have seen CWD, and there's another disease that is making its way north. And then the third is for our forest regeneration, because Big Oak Plain is one of only maybe two or a couple of our county parks that we are doing active timber management on because of its size. It's 1,400 acres. So we do timber management in there, not to the extent we do for our county forest, because it is a park and we want to maintain a certain aesthetics and coverage, but because it's heavily used, but we want to maintain that old growth forest and try to regenerate that. So we had public comment there today and extensive discussion, but the Park Commission did move forward with recommending this ordinance revision to allow a archery hunt in Big Oak Plain Park during the open season from November 15th through the Sunday nearest January 6th. This mirrors the state parks. They don't open until November 15th. So this is what we recommended as well, because our campgrounds are open until October 31st. And it eliminates the number of hunters that may be wanting to come in there, because the next week is that 9-day gun deer hunt. This will be archery only allowed in Big Oak Plain through this time. And so the changes that they made compared to what's in front of you is that they're not going to restrict the area to the only area the north of the fork. So that was taken out. So it would be the entire park that they would open this to, with the thought that the deer, we think they're not smart, but they go where they're not pressured. And so they're just going to go further south and be in that area. Plus, they're used to being in that area at the moment, because we do have a problem with campers feeding the deer, which we try to regulate so that they don't keep coming in there. So archery hunting is permitted in areas of Big Oak Plain Park, and then the next areas between the commas is taken out only during the open season. And then they changed the 50 feet to 100 feet off of a designated trail. And they added 100 feet from a designated trail or structure, and must shoot from an elevated platform. So meaning that to reduce, because Big Oak Plain is open year-round for users, so there's equestrian, there's bikers, and there's fat tire bikers, is that the reduction of incident of an arrow flying longer than 100 feet for a regular bow and arrow may not be that far, but crossbows are also allowed in that archery definition, which has longer. So if you're at an elevated platform, this is what the town of Rim Mountain requires, and that's because then the arrow is going down into the ground, reducing the distance that it flies. So that is what they recommended, and then kept the rest. The access to the park is from 6 a.m. or 1 hour prior to shooting till 11 p.m. So, Rick, did I miss anything?
I have a question for you.
Well, hold on, Marilyn. I think, Rick, you wanted to speak first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the public comment, we had a farmer there that said in the evening, he said he would have 100+ deer coming out onto his field, and he's been pushing this for, if I can remember, for the last 4 years. But the population out there is getting, very heavy, and the deer know that they can go back into here and just say, hey, bye, But I think this is a good thing, to try it. Hopefully that this will solve some of the problem out there, but I really do urge that we go ahead with this into the Chapter 19. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, who will be allowed to do the enforcement?
We have the two rec deputies that will help us enforce it, as well as we have some staff that will be able to help enforce as well. But our rec deputies know this was being discussed. So, Sheriff's Department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jamie. I think the proposed language and everything, the intent is very good. My question is, do we have additional options? And I guess what I'm wondering about when I hear the number of deer that potentially are out there, are there any avenues or tools that we can use for some type of targeted hunt in the terms of nuisance abatement? You know, because here and this is great. We're hoping that general hunters will come out and turn out and help us solve the problem. But I guess I'm wondering within county ordinance or state law if there's any provision for the ability to us to decide we're going to have some type of a targeted hunt where we're going to sweep through Eau Plaine with, and hire hunters to come in and actually try to thin that area out.
You want to?
Staff can feel free to address that. One point I want to make while they can develop responses. Do we have the actual language that Park Commission passed by chance? Because
No.
I think that would be useful to have up on the screen. I think this is the old.
No, but I can pull it up quick.
You want to email me? We could
Perfect.
Get it maybe
Okay.
pulled up or.
So yeah, Mike or Jamie,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to have a very helpful response. I'm fairly confident that nothing in our county ordinances would address this. I think this would likely be a DNR regulated question. I don't know what abatement procedures they would authorize or can authorize, so that we would have to look into, but my guess would be it would be in consultation with DNR to determine what abatement procedures they would allow in that type of circumstance. I'm guessing there may be something, but I just don't know.
The other discussion, Rick, while I'm getting this typed up, do you want to just let them know that we did discuss a special youth hunt, or not youth hunt, a special hunt and special permits like by lottery and stuff like that versus just this language that the state parks use and what the committee said?
We did discuss doing a permit hunt only, where we'd give out so many permits, and if we had more people apply than we had permits, we'd go to the lottery system. But it would be a lot more work for DNR staff and our staff to, well, how would you say this, manage it and see that the permits were given out fairly. But when you do permit hunting, you're going to get people out there that say, okay, I got a permit, but now I can only shoot, you can shoot bucks or does out there during this hunt. But if you do it during a permit, they're going to be less adamant to report that, okay, we've seen this many deer. We're asking to, if you could give us a count, how many you see. They're going to be more adamant not to report that, even though it is a permit hunt. If you do a regular hunt, and it was suggested that we put online, I think it was, Jamie, to have a suggestion box about how many, not necessarily how many deer they saw, but if they did shoot a doe or a buck. We just thought it would be a lot more work. I mean, we don't need to have our staff working on that and costing us some more money. So.
Yeah, one thing we would like to do with this, because we do want to see the impacts of it, because this is something that if we decide isn't making an impact or is too detrimental to the use of the park or, isn't doing what we thought, then we would come back and this ordinance would be revised. But we would put not only on the website, but informational signage, for one, educational signage for everybody, every user out there, but also some areas where the hunters can specifically say what day they shot their deer and whether it was a buck or doe. So we can have that count, because by opening it up and following the state park regulations, we don't have that ability. If someone harvests a deer and they register it, it doesn't show where they got it. So we don't, it says zone, which zone they shot it in. That doesn't help us to know it's in the park. If we did special permits, we'd be able to regulate that a little bit more, but there is a lot more administration with that, and it does limit the impact of what we're trying to accomplish. Lori, I did email it to you.
Thank you. So help me understand the public safety aspect of this, because when we're talking about, especially in the winter where people might be snowshoeing, skiing, fat tire biking.
Yep.
Like when I originally read this, I thought, well, yeah, if you have one section of the campground, you can post signs and everything that this would be going on. But unless I misheard it incorrectly, now this is opened up to the entire Big O Plain.
Mm-hmm.
So what's, I guess, not to sound absurd, but what's to stop somebody that says, well, I want to, take a fat tire bike ride today, and they're not wearing bright colors, and then they end up getting hit or something like that. Like, I view it as a public safety concern. I'm sure it's a good explanation, because we'd be hearing more problems about that in state parks. But can you provide some enlightenment there, please?
Yeah, so that is a risk, and that's why this was a big discussion with the Park Commission, because that is a concern. To mitigate that, and we're talking with DNR, from the state and how the state parks work, to mitigate that is we would definitely put a lot of signage out there so we can educate the public that this is happening. The second reason is why we're limiting to archery hunt only, and why we will not allow any rifle hunting in there or muzzleloader hunting. Archery is, crossbows can shoot further, but traditional archery doesn't. Usually you don't shoot at a deer that far because your trajectory is not that far, and so it's limited in distance. So adding that 100 feet off of a designated trail does separate those stands from those trails by quite a distance. And also that downward trajectory from the elevated stand is a safety concern too that they talked about, because then, when you're shooting at a deer, you're shooting down. If you miss the deer, the arrow goes right into the ground, rather than if you're shooting up over, then it's going, maybe beyond your target and not being there. So the safety mitigations we would put in would be safety signage, the 100 feet off of a trail, this elevated stand, and then the fact that it's archery only. The other part of it is we believe starting after November 15th in the same rules as your state parks, is because it's after the biggest part of the rut. So a lot of people will have gotten their deer already. If they're archery hunting, they want to be out when the rut's happening. So this reduces some of the hunters that would be out there. But also it's a week before the gun deer hunt, where most people, if they archery hunt, they also gun deer hunt, and that's only open for that 9 days. So they're going to go do that during that week, which eliminates the number of people in the park. And then, two, it's cold during that time. So usually, if you're an archer, if you're a diehard archer, you hunt the whole season. Even if you're a diehard archer, you might only hunt. Archery is good when it's warmer out and you can get closer to the deer. That's the idea of the skill of the deer coming up to you. So I think that is what our thought process is of trying to mitigate the safety measures of doing that. We did have a gentleman in the audience who is a very regular mountain biker out at Big O Plain, and did speak to the 100. We had 50 feet in there. The 100 feet was something that he suggested. The elevated stand also was something he suggested. He didn't feel it would be a problem. People can hike out at 9 Mile during all of the seasons, and we just encourage them to wear orange. They cannot bike. We do have a designated cutoff day of biking, but we don't stop people from going into our county forest during hunting season. We just, strongly suggest you be aware that hunting is here and you are dress appropriately. And there is a gun hunting on our county forest. In this instant, it would just be archery.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering the height of an elevated stand. What do you classify in that? I can stand on a stump and be elevated. I'm just wondering. So
yeah, and we didn't specify that. So that that could be an adjustment to the ordinance.
Oh, Supervisor Krasinski.
Thank you. And I'm going to follow up on that and ask about a little bit of language. Do we need language or not? Because I'm not an archery hunter, but you think of duck hunting, you think of blinds and that, and sometimes those are put out permanently. Some are put out for a season. I know some people who deer hunt who will place a stand for a season. Was there any thought given to whether or not we needed to regulate the nature of when those elevated stands are present? Does it bring it in and take it out the same day? Is it allowed to be there over a weekend? What was the thought process?
Yep, we do have, so under that same section, we have blinds, and that was really for waterfowl. But we would have the same language, which we should probably add in here. That's a good suggestion, because we do not allow, it has to be removed at the end of each hunting day. We don't allow permanent structures and stands and blinds within the parks now. And that's why you put access to the park for purposes of hunting is only allowed starting at 6 a.m. or 1 hour before shooting until 11 p.m. So really that's when they can come in and out. I guess we should, Michael, probably add a deer stand to that section, correct?
Would you be okay, Director, if the other parts were considered today and this section would be referred back? Or
Yeah,
would you-
we can bring it back. Mhm.
Okay, just a hypothetical for the committee, because I think the Park Commission ultimately should be responsible for developing that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was the intention, is we do have that in our forest ordinances. It's very specific of stands and when they can be left and how they need to be labeled and stuff like that. So we can add that same language. Or we
Okay.
can bring it back.
Supervisor Seefeld?
Yeah, the stands, you can use your elevated stand. When you leave the hunt, you have to take your elevated stand down. You can chain it to the tree so nobody steals it, but it has to come down. If it doesn't come down, I think last year our wrecks out there, they had 6 deer stands and nobody claimed them because they're going to get a violation. So they know that they got to take them down. So.
Okay. Any other questions for that section? Just the deer stand stuff, I think, is appropriate to go back. Everything else, I think, could be considered today based on the discussion that's taken place thus far. So that's it then for Chapter 19, correct? Or is there, I think there's some more.
Wait, well, the only other thing in Chapter 19 is exactly the same as Chapter 16 with adding the fat tire bike. This is not linked to Chapter 16 because this is for the park ordinance, but we did realize that we do allow fat tire biking in Bago Plain, and this was never included in the ordinance. So this was a clarification to also have it in our parks ordinance to mirror this county forest ordinance. And that would be most of it. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for the director? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, like I said, I think that for the work today, I think it would be fine if we just forwarded these recommendations to the county board, but that what section is this? 1907 sub 1 sub 6 2, I think. That be referred back to the committee, but we forward the rest to the county board for their consideration. So. Any other discussion? Not, I'd appreciate a motion. Supervisor Seefeld?
I make a motion, we have the chapters, oops, no, I'm not using it. I make a motion, we accept the updates except for the hunting part, which
we talked about.
Yep, we talked about for chapters 16 and 19. of the Madison County General Code for Park and Rec, or Forestry.
Okay. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Rodney Roskopf. Any further discussion? Staff, you feel you have direction then?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Supervisor Shafinsky.
I'm just going to speak, I'm going to play devil's advocate, and not that I have any problem with accepting the changes as proposed, but from the standpoint of making the best use of the county board's time, would it make sense to refer all this back to committee, have them fix the changes, bring it forward, and then we're making one issue that we're taking to the board?
Yeah. Director Polly, would that, if all these were taken back to Park, would that impact any of the work that your staff is currently doing?
The only one that I think we would like to put forward is Chapter 16 and keep that moving forward, because that is to get ready for that fat tire season. We do have some signage that needs to be ordered and, all the recommendations of the board. So if that is something that is officially approved, then we know we can move forward with that work. So I think if we could, Chapter 19, I'm okay holding that for another month, and we'll bring them just separately. But I think Chapter 16, I would recommend or prefer that we move that one forward.
I mean, it doesn't, to Supervisor Shafinsky's point, it still ends up as two actionable items, but it does make the process a little cleaner. Did you have any thoughts, Supervisor Shafinsky?
I honestly don't see the urgency in terms of a month one way or the other, so.
Okay.
I guess I think we just keep it as simple and clean as possible.
Okay.
Well, they're two separate items, though, too. I just chose to bring them forward as one, but Chapter 16 and Chapter 19 are completely different.
Sure. Well, I guess Supervisor Seefeld, you made the motion, so.
So I rescind my motion.
Where's the lawyer? There he is.
You need a second rescinded.
If the motion is withdrawn, then you don't have to withdraw the second. You just are at the point where a new motion would be in order.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to withdraw your motion then?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Anybody like
Second.
to offer
Yes, I will offer that we forward to the county board Chapter 16 of the Madison County General Code, Park and Forestry, and Chapter 19 back to the Park Commission.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Shafinsky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to B, review and possible recommendations to County Board for its consideration, town zoning changes pursuant to 60.62 sub 3 of Wisconsin statutes. We have none. C, review and possible recommendations to County Board for its consideration. 1, potential sale of county parkland.
Mr. Chair, I'd like this to be actually removed off of the agenda.
Okay.
The Park Commission did not move this forward for further discussion, so I do not think it needs any further action.
Sounds good. D, review and possible action. 1, Satine Acres final plat, Town of Satine. Dave, is that you?
Yes, that's me. So I'll just go through the staff report here real quick. I will mention too that Keith Wachowski, the surveyor, is here if anyone has any further questions. But as far as the plat requirements, it meets the survey requirements. Plat complies with Chapter 236 of the Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 87 of the Wisconsin Administrative Code, and Chapter 18 of the Marathon County Code of Ordinances regarding subdivisions and mapping. It is town zoned in the town of Statine. Environmental conditions, the stormwater management plan was submitted with the preliminary plat and has been approved by the Department of Natural Resources. Erosion control plan was included with that, and the wetland areas are indicated on the plat and will not be disturbed. Sanitary sewer, there have been soil tests submitted to the Marathon County Pouts Department. They were all verified on-site by the on-site waste specialist, and they are just waiting to process those for the plat approval so they can use the new PIN numbers for the new parcels. And as far as access, all proposed lots will have access to an improved public road which connects to Statine Drive. Prior to the submittal of Steen Acres final plat for approval, concept plat discussions took place regarding design concepts and county requirements. The Environmental Resources Committee approved the preliminary plat on May 30th. The town of Steen approved the preliminary plat on June 12th, and the city of Wausau approved the preliminary plat on June 13th. So based on the information provided, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee approve the proposed final plat of Steen Acres.
Any questions for Dave? Yeah, from where we left off, I think we had some discussions about the town and city approving it, and it sounds like they did. So, very good. So a motion to approve from us would be in order, I believe, right, Dave?
Correct. So a motion to approve the final plat of Steen Acres, and this is just ERC approval. It does not go to
Okay.
county board.
Okay, any questions? That, what would the committee like to do? Supervisor Shavinsky?
I will move that we move ahead with final approval of the Steen Acres plot.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Supervisor Obrecht.
Thank you. In the lots to the east, there seems to be quite a few wetlands, and even lot 22 looks barely buildable. Has that been looked at as far as the overall layout?
Yeah, I can refer to Keith Wachowski, the surveyor. I do believe that all of the lots have enough buildable area outside of the wetlands, but I'll let him speak to that.
Do I need to be sworn in? Or?
No, not for these.
Okay.
Not for these.
All right.
If you could speak into the mic, that's the only thing.
Okay, not a problem. So yeah,
Thank
we have actually house plans for each individual lot, and the septic locations are already determined. So basically we designed everything to make sure that the house and septic would all fit on each lot. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? Thank you, by the way. All right. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, we are on to 6A2, Marathon County Zoning Code Comprehensive Revision Process. I want to start just by saying that last month we had a request to take up a matter regarding lot sizes and how that may or may not impact housing development. So for the new members, this is good education for you all. Just to give you a little bit of background, and staff can correct anything that I get wrong. But every 10 years, we do a comprehensive review of our zoning code. In the past, the first one that I got to witness firsthand, there was a task force that was created where you had a representative from town zone towns, non-zone towns. We had realty represented on the group to look through at the code comprehensively and recommend changes to the ERC, or I guess at that time it was land conservation and zoning. So given that discussion last month, we talked about lot sizes, and I remember back then there was a lot of discussion in regards to the farmland preservation minimum lot sizes. I would feel more comfortable if we had that discussion next year when this group is formed. So I wanted to give some more information, education to the committee, of course, of what that process would entail, why I think that's a better venue to have those discussions. So staff can provide some
So
information.
Shad
now.
Harvey will give a brief overview, but we did skip over A1, so if we can come back to that after, we can do 2 first, and then, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, and then we'll come back to 1.
Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can start with the comprehensive revision process. First, just like what was just said, the purpose of a comprehensive revision essentially is to make sure our code is up to date, provide a chance for the public to provide input on changes they feel may be needed, provide towns an opportunity as well, and ultimately let a town decide if county zoning isn't for them, allow them an opportunity to get out if it's not working for them, and then provide the county a chance to kind of redirect the code if they feel certain things need to be addressed, or we want to use the zoning code to guide our community in a different direction. So the basic process is actually very similar to how we do our annual revisions, other than it's a bit more stretched out because it is a more comprehensive, in-depth look of our zoning code. For example, the idea is every 10 years we'd go through that comprehensive revision process. The last one was in 2016, so 2026 we would be due for the other update. What we're looking at doing is beginning some outreach in the fall of 2024, so starting next year already, essentially a survey out to the townships, to the community to try and get some input on what they feel is working, what isn't working in our zoning code, so we can start compiling the more in-depth discussions that we'll need to have. And then 2025 would be town meetings, going to town meetings, getting their input, explaining the process to them, education to the towns, holding open houses, and then a public hearing. So just like our annual updates, only a little bit more in depth. And then ultimately what happens is it would come to ERC for the final, essentially you guys would recommend the approval to the county board. And then if county board approved, it would go into effect. The goal would be to have the new comprehensive revision done by February of 2026, so it's ready to go for essentially the busy season. There is a period where, so once that code is adopted, since it's a comprehensive vision, our towns do have a year to essentially adopt that code. In the meantime, the old code would still apply to the towns that are in county zoning. So for a period there, we will be likely enforcing two separate codes until a town were to have a resolution to adopt into county zoning or choose not to participate in county zoning. That's a very quick overview. I know this comprehensive revision, we do have some ability to make it look a little different than the last one, partially because the last one we were going from, we were essentially changing the code very dramatically. We changed our zoning districts and things like that, so there was a lot more work that went into just getting the basics lined out. And that is a possibility for this one too. If that was the direction we were given to go, we could go that direction as well. Given that we have been doing annual updates, our code is fairly up to date. But as Mr. Chair was saying, it would be a good opportunity to address some of those bigger items that would impact the community as a whole a little bit more during that time. If I may also add, just regarding the lot sizes, one of the reasons, so currently our zoning code, our minimum lot size for a parcel that is zoned urban residential is half an acre. And the reason a half an acre exists, that's without sewer or sand or water line or anything like that. The reason for the half acre is to make sure that property has adequate spacing for septic or a pout system. Additionally to that, just so the committee is aware, our towns are able to have their own land division ordinances. There are several towns out there that they have a minimum land division ordinance of 2 acres. So just because our zoning code says it could go down to a certain point doesn't necessarily mean that in the particular town that would be allowed. So just some things to consider on that front. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to address.
Thank you. Just one question from an information standpoint. That half acre minimum, is that from a time when I used to live in Cronenwether, the idea was that there were half acre lots that allowed for not only the placement of a private septic system, but it also allowed enough room for placement of a second should that fail. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct, or is that needed of updating?
Yep. So that is essentially the one of the goals of having that minimum lot size. I can't say it's the only goal, but that is a consideration that is taken into account with that lot size. That's one thing, because as we all know, septic systems don't last forever, and there may be an opportunity to remedy the old septic system depending on the system, but it is always helpful to have room for an additional area if needed.
So I still want to honor that request, but I just think that there's a better time to take that up, especially when we have an opportunity to bring in stakeholders from all these different groups, especially realty, if we're going to be talking about housing development. Not that I'm trying to kick the can down the road. I just think that at that point is a better time to have that discussion. So, Supervisor Sheffield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really wasn't aware of this being changed in a couple of years. So, I'm looking for answers because we do, as we know, the EED committee is trying to work on affordable housing. And one of the questions that always seems to come is, why is the zoning code so strict? This is what I'm getting, feedback. And to me, I don't think it's that strict, but does it change when, say like Weston, they got sewer and water. Does that change the size of a lot?
There are certain provisions in like certain zoning districts that the minimum lot size is changed if sewer is available.
Thank you.
Now, I'll say a couple of things to that, which is it would be interesting to know whether or not when an individual says zoning ordinance, do they live in a city? Do they live in a village? Are they under county zoning? Are they under town zoning? I certainly would like to have some more information for that. But I will say this, and were you around for that revision in 2016? Were either you two? No? Well, I know you were, and I remember those discussions about the minimum lot sizes for the ag areas, and wow. But Marilyn, did you have something?
No, I was going to say, because I remember on that, and I remember your dad was on that committee, and you have to remember, is it a rural area or right into an urban area, how much space you need? Because, in the rural area, you might have a house, they want to put up a garage, then they want to put up a shed, and then you have to be so far away from the property lines, that becomes a problem.
Sure. I guess to go back to the first point being made, though, is that I think there is a role for this to play. I just don't want to alienate people because the ag group will be the first ones to show up if we mess with this without their input. I've seen that play out before. Mm-hmm. So, Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you, Chair. In addressing Supervisor Seafeld's observation, I guess what I would also bring to the table is a little bit of an observation of the development that went on along Town Line Road in Wausau. And those are, if they're quarter acre, I'm not even sure that they're that large. So they're inside city limits, not county jurisdiction.
Sure.
But the property values and the so-called affordable housing that was developed there is, it's something of a red herring. It's not land size that's driving up the cost. So I don't think that that's something that we need to be concerned about.
Sure. Okay. Like I said, this is purely educational today. I wanted to provide an update of where the ERC would be going with a topic like that. It will be addressed. I want to have stakeholders involved before we do something like that.
I understand that. It's just
Yep.
get a lot of pressure.
Okay. All right. Very good. Moving on to, we'll go back. 6A1, I apologize. Forthcoming petition for the town of Knowlton for a text amendment to the Marathon County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 17, text amendment to 17.204.01, E, F, and G.
All right, so I just wanted to make the committee aware, we do have a petition that'll be coming forth at the next ERC meeting, the 1st of August, regarding, and essentially just to give everybody some clarity on this, Chapter 17 gives an opportunity for citizens or municipalities, townships to come to the ERC committee and propose a change to the zoning code if they feel it's an area is not working for them, or if they feel it's a large scale thing that could be addressed. And it works very similarly to essentially a rezone. The petition comes in, we notify the towns or the individuals that would be affected. So in this case, since it's a zoning code change, we would notify all of the Marathon County towns that are in county zoning, ask for their input. We do public notices, and then it comes in front of the committee, the ERC committee, to essentially be looked at, much like you look at the annual updates. But this particular rezone, just to inform the committee, is regarding livestock, particularly chickens. It's to address minimum lot sizes for chickens. The actual change that's being petitioned is available on our website to review. We do have a draft up there to kind of illustrate what the overall change would be. And I can pull that up right now.
While you're doing that, Shad, can you give the group a 10,000-foot view of this chicken minimum lot size thing?
Yeah. So essentially, can you turn that one off? So essentially, what this is currently our zoning code in certain districts, like urban residential, does not allow for livestock of any sort, including chickens. What we're running into, the town of Knowlton is requesting a change to the minimum lot size, which I believe is 2 acres currently, and they're requesting a reduction to a half an acre for 6 chickens, 1 acre for 12 chickens, excluding roosters and peacocks. That's currently, some of that language is already in our code, but that currently is the petition that they're bringing forth to ERC to see if they can essentially to see if you would feel that this would need to be changed. One of the things I want to add on this, we have reached out to other townships to try and get information and their opinions on it. Again, this petition will be coming forward at the next meeting, so we should hopefully have some input from other towns by that point. As of right now, we have a few emails, but nothing that's officially went through a town board. So we're hoping by the end of next month, we'll have actual town input.
Just one more question. So you said that nothing's gone through a town board yet. Where did the petition come from?
So the petition came from the town of Knowlton.
Okay.
Yep. So the town board of Knowlton put together a petition and had a resolution to bring it forth to ERC.
Okay.
He's referring to the fact that we requested comment from all the other county zone towns.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Very good. All right, Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does this also include like ducks and geese? And, well, I know some people raise some rabbits. I'm just wondering if any of them small like that, animals.
So it would be chickens and whatever fits into the poultry, excluding peacocks. And fowl, sorry. Yep.
So you said that the potential amendment is available on the website?
Yep.
Oh, I was going to ask, can you also please email it to the ERC? Just the language of the amendment. Oh, like this.
This would be the resolution. And this is on our website, but we can definitely send that out. And then just
Yes, please.
The proposed changes are in blue. There's like a light blue right there.
There is?
Yeah, the P is the only change on this. The other ones are links. But then in the actual text itself, we've got, it's a little easier to address in the text. So red would be it's getting taken out, and blue would be it's going in.
Okay. Okay. Marilyn?
A difference between a town zoned and county zoned town on any of these restrictions on the chickens and animals and fowl and everything else?
So this only applies to county zone towns. This wouldn't affect non-zone towns or town zone towns, just county zone.
Any other questions at this time? Otherwise, this will be coming up very shortly. But yeah, I would just request that staff please just send this to the group.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. So we did 6A2 already, so we will move down to 7, policy issues discussion and potential committee determination. A, revisions to the letter to Governor Evers and Wisconsin Legislature in support of more local environmental control. I'll make this very brief. In between the time that this letter went from ERZ to Executive Committee, I noticed a revision that needed to take place, and I didn't feel comfortable making an amendment at exec without input from this group, so I brought it back because we weren't in a time crunch for this. And during that time, I also noticed 2 other things that I wanted to address. So you'll see the amendments in the red language. The first one in the second paragraph has to do with runoff. I noticed after some discussions that a lot of the problems that we have with regulating runoff really aren't targeted to CAFOs specifically. And a lot, because the CAFOs are regulated by the state of Wisconsin. In a lot of cases where we're finding there might be difficulties is if they're on that borderline between small producer and they get up to the CAFO level. So this expands that a little bit more to target what we're actually getting at when we're talking about regulating runoff. The second one that reads, the existing framework is inefficient and burdensome for communities. Prior to this, it had said developers and communities. And to be honest with you all, I've never had a discussion with a developer that outright said that these were inefficient and burdensome, so I did not feel directing the county to make that type of statement without some backup. And then the last one is a simple text change that it did read, thank you for your time and consideration relative to, relative to Marathon County residents. I can't remember. Welcome to the Marathon County residents and communities. I just changed this up. Thank you for your time and consideration relative to Marathon County's residents and communities. So I would argue that the intent behind this letter has not changed. I just cleaned up the language a little bit before I bring this to exec, because as I mentioned last month, I want to make sure this is as ready for prime time as possible. And I think if you know anything about me from this group, I'm not going to take something from ERC unless I know that it went in front of the members and they had a chance to review it. So that's why I brought it back. I'd ask for your support again, and I'll take this to exec. Anything else?
Supervisor Longenhahn, here's the corrected one.
That's the same as this,
Yes,
correct?
yes, that.
Okay. Supervisor Shafinsky.
I will move to approve and move forward to the board.
Motion by Supervisor Shafinsky, second by Supervisor Bensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you again, everybody.
Very well written.
Oh, I had help. We'll move on to B, continue discussion regarding 2024 annual budget and policy recommendations from the committee. 1, mandatory versus non-mandatory programs. 2, use of fees and rates. And 3, understanding a department's use of levy. So I think we'll start with the staff providing an overview. They have some grant information that this group requested last month. And then I have some information that I would like to present to the committee regarding the body of work that will be produced from these discussions. So Director Miskimins, if...
Yeah, so following last month's meeting, I believe the only additional question that was brought back to CPZ and Parks was to answer the number of people that are grant funded within our department. So we did at CPZ, we did a quick look back, and we came up with, it is about 6.5 positions are grant funded annually in CPZ. And that is a combination of conservation grants, MPO. I think those are the two big grant sources that we have. Oh, and land information grants as well.
Director Polly?
Yes, and in our department, we have 2 positions that have a somewhat grant funding. It's our county forest administrator. Half of his position is grant funded through the state's county forest administrator program. So 50%, that includes wages and benefits. And then our recreation coordinator, which was our non-motorized, or our motorized recreation coordinator at one point. Now he's a full-time recreation coordinator, but 35% of his salary is allocated through the snowmobile and ATV grants that we receive. So we don't have quite one FTE. It's 0.85 in our department.
Okay. So, and we'll have some, can I ask one question? Thank you. Is there any sign that there might be continued opportunities for additional grant funding in the future for positions? I asked that of both directors.
Yeah, I think we are always on the lookout for additional grants. Typically, there may be funding sources out there for conservation. Sometimes there are opportunities that come up for land information and even potentially transportation related to the MPO, but we're pretty much completely funded there. We joke that we're always on the lookout for zoning grants. So if anyone, Shad will apply. He will gladly apply. Yeah, so I think, yes, I think we're always looking for additional grant funds.
Okay, and then Director Polly, and then.
We also look for grants. I think we have more limited opportunity for grants in our area of what's available, but I do know that the state is increasing the funding for snowmobile and ATV programs, so there is potential that we could potentially get more grant aid that could help our staffing with that.
Okay, Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you. I think, Lori, this is more for you, but it could involve both departments. You mentioned, I believe, about 6 full-time equivalent positions for your department. I guess for context, percentage-wise, is that 5% of your people, 50%? Put that number in context in terms of the total size of the department, please, just for understanding.
Help me out with math. So we have 30 FTE, so it's 6.5. What does that work out to percentage-wise?
Over 20%?
Yeah.
Just over?
I was going to say about 20%. So.
Okay, that's good enough. I just was wondering, if it's 6 out of 12 or if it's 6 out of 30 makes a little bit difference in our understanding.
It's about almost 22% is what it comes out to. So.
Well, we have 44 full-time staff, so we have less than 1 FTE that's grant funded.
Is there any reason why Park and Forestry that there aren't as many opportunities out there?
There's not a lot of state, or really these come from state funding, what these programs are. So there's not a lot of extra state funding for Parks and Recreation at the moment.
Is there more funding available for park projects? Or?
There is, yep.
Okay.
So there's different programs for trail and land acquisition and development, but not for staffing, and my current understanding of the programs. Yep.
What about maintenance?
Typically, the grant programs aren't for ongoing maintenance. It's just for the construction of it, which is one of the problems of whether or not we apply for grants, is what it's going to add to the workload. But no, typically not for maintenance.
So this was a follow-up from last month with some the information about the grant funding, because we had some really good discussion last month about for CPZ in particular, it's about 1 out of every $3 that go into the department is actually from the levy, and with Park it's actually less than $1 for every $3. It's like 32%, I think, for your department, Director Polly. Yeah. So I think that's something that, in regards to our budget talks here, I'm trying to long-term produce and I would hope you would all support it, a body of work regarding the financial future of this area of programming. I think that for the past couple months, we've had some very good discussions about level of service, about, the Parks Department potentially pursuing naming rights for their facilities, and that would allow them to fund their operations that way. We've had some discussions about potential efficiencies gained from the electronization, I don't know how you say it, of processes at conservation planning and zoning. And what I'm trying to get at is, I want us to continue to innovate. I want us to be able to explain to the Finance Committee where our priorities are, which segues into my next point. When I was thinking about this process the past couple weeks, I realized that a number of years ago, and Chair Gibbs might even be able to add some more context here, we had this system, and the new members have definitely heard about it. It's called priority-based budgeting. And with priority-based budgeting, the idea was that you look at each department and you gather all this data. And that data ranged from the cost of programs to the mandatory versus discretionary nature of that program. And you can kind of see that flavor with that document that we got a couple months ago with all those programs. Except this was a matter of specifically department heads looking at their budgets, if I recall correctly, and would rank the priorities of the programs that they administer. So that if there were constrained, sorry if I spit there, if there were constrained resources, you would be able to say, hey, what are the priorities of the department? What do we have to address? And I think that's something that's really beneficial for the standing committee system. I don't know if any other standing committees are having those prioritization talks, but I think given that our ERC group did this, did you look and see where that chart came from, if that was in 2019 or?
I believe the work was maybe started in 2019 or 2020 and finalized in early 2021. I know it was before I started, so
okay.
I think it was right around, but maybe Director Pauly knows when they finalized the priority-based budgeting spreadsheets. Any recollection?
I don't think it's really ever been finalized.
Oh, it was never finalized. Okay, there's your answer.
We did.
But we have a spreadsheet?
All the departments went through an exercise based on certain attributes or criteria where they were to rank their programs based on things of, is it mandated to provide reliance on the county to provide the program, change in demand, cost recovery, portion of the community served. I think those were some of the criteria. Yeah. And so I guess it never officially got adopted is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, we went through one more exercise where we narrowed down our categories. Because we used to have, I think, 70-some categories, narrowed them down to 30. And I think that's where it got left with each department. And yeah.
Sure.
It had not gone through.
What's that?
It hasn't gone through for any official adoption or anything, though.
Well, what I'm getting is I want ERC to do it again because it's been a number of years since we've done that. I feel that it would be a good exercise for us to learn more about the programs that we administer, including the ones that were listed in that spreadsheet from a couple months ago. And I think that if the ask is that we prioritize the work that we do when it comes to constrained resources, I think that would be a useful document for HR Finance to have from this group. So what are your thoughts? Oh, I'm stunned. Sorry, Supervisor Sheminsky.
Big surprise. I'm the first one to have a thought.
Go ahead.
No, I think you raise a lot of good points, and we need to revisit the priorities because priorities do change over time. So it makes perfect sense to go through this effort every few years, and now it seems like a perfect time to do that.
Okay. Because like I was saying earlier, if we're going to talk about the work that this group does, and we've had discussions about level of service, and those were very good discussions. I want there to be something at the end of these months of discussion with the budget. I want an actual work product produced from this group. And I think that would lend itself quite a bit to the production of that document. So that's what I would Director Pauly.
If I may, just from a staffing perspective, I think I haven't been in that program in 3 years probably. I think we would have to see if we still have access to the program. It's going to take staff a little bit of time to dig back into those.
I'm not even saying go back into that program because I know there are limitations with that program. Do you have the spreadsheet itself from 2019, 2020.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll take a little bit to find it, but I
Yeah.
think I have a hard copy for sure, that I know.
Yep. What I'm getting at is it possible to have those type of discussions and prioritizations without that data?
I think we could put that together based on what we have. It just might take a little time just because we haven't really visited those in a while.
Okay.
But
By September?
yeah, by September, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we can look through what we have too. I mean, Lori's new.
So, yeah, I guess the question is like, I was not here
No.
before, so that's why I'm looking at Corporation Counsel and Director Polly, because I think they were here for the actual work of it, and I know Diane's online too. I think the question is, what are we just being asked to revisit the final priorities that came out of that, or even though they weren't finalized or adopted, and then confirm whether or not we feel those are correct?
Essentially, yes. What I would like to see is next month, I want to see that original spread. Well, even before that, I would like this group to see what was done back in 2019, with the caveat being that a number of things have changed since 2019, of course, and see what has been done. And I would like to have some discussion in August about what an updated 2023 document might look like for these groups. Does that make sense?
I know we have our spreadsheet. I don't know, Director Polly, you said you do have your spreadsheet.
Yeah, and I'm not saying have this tomorrow. Besides, if you can locate your spreadsheets, please provide that to this group as soon as possible. But the updating, I understand, will take time. To Director Polly's credit, I get it. Supervisor Obrecht.
I think one of the values of seeing what was done already would be to form a basis and then look at what has changed to date, but then also look to the future as far as what are the trends that are happening that will force us to change our zoning and code and all the other things. How are people living right now? How are they using land? What do they want for services? And I think we've got to be prepared to do that within that plan is to address the future of Marathon County.
Chair Longenhahn?
Yes, go ahead.
My business manager, Diane Hansen's on the line too, and I know she was involved for CPZ, and she wanted to ask a clarifying question as well.
Of course, Diane, by all means.
Thank you. Okay, so when you say that you want the spreadsheet, is it the spreadsheet with the priority-based budgeting programs ranking of the programs, or are you just looking for a spreadsheet with the programs that were identified back in 2000? I think the last document we submitted was actually in 2021, but I don't think it really went anywhere after that. And I think the ranking that I have might be from 2020 or 2019 data. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. So I just want to make sure that I understand what spreadsheet data you're actually looking for.
Yep, and I'll make it easy. I want both. The other thing, actually, I'll add something else as well. Any criteria that was used with the ranking of the priority-based budgeting document, including the 2021 document that you just mentioned, I'd like that as well provided to the group.
Okay, because I think the only information we have about the criteria with that priority-based budgeting system is a PowerPoint about all of the data that we had to provide for them to do the ranking.
Okay.
I mean, we internally did not do the ranking. It was this priority-based budgeting system that did the ranking based on the data that we provided.
Okay.
I know that we have a PowerPoint that identifies what criteria they were going to look at to develop the ranking. And then the only other caveat, like you mentioned, is that things have changed. At one point, like Jamie had mentioned, we had like 75 programs or whatever, and we whittled ours down to about 30. And now when Lori and I looked at it earlier, I think there's some more whittling that we can do because some of them are really not programs. They're more or less tasks that are done within our department. That would be something that we would probably have to clean up a little bit.
So I thank you for that, and I appreciate the information regarding the criteria. Then I'm just asking simply for whatever you have, because I think that the process was a good one in theory, and this group has had prioritization talks in the past. What I'm getting at is that I think that there were some issues with the priority-based budgeting piece in the past. I think Chair Gibbs would agree with me that there was a lack of good data with that tool. But I still think that we can have some meaningful discussions if we have an overview of what that looked like, and maybe it's something that we can build upon to provide to finance in the fall here when they're having the budget talks. Cool? Cool. All right. Anything else? Oh, Marilyn.
I think it's a good idea, but I think we need to know what are the priorities of this committee? What are our responsibilities in our mission statement? What do we say that we stand for? We look at that, and I think we go off of that because things change, and we have to adapt to those changes, but we still have a basis to go on. But what does this committee stand for? What do we want to have its mission statement or whatever?
Well, that will be my ask going into the fall. That's another reason why I think this would be a good exercise. So, and primarily because if I look at 1, 2, and 3 here, we've basically accomplished all those, and it is the end of June. And these groups are still having discussions. So like I said, I would like to develop a work product, and I think this would help. Okay. Anything else? Go to the order. All right. Staff, you feel you have, oh, Jamie left. Okay. You have direction, right?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. All right, moving on to C, Wisconsin legislator updates. I'm not going to read all those. I don't know, Director Polly, if you'd like to, sorry, Director Miskimins, if you'd like to go
All
ahead.
right, for the first two, I'm going to turn it over to Teal Fixon. So,
Teal.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak just very briefly. I figured I'd bring it to your attention. I'm the land use analyst for conservation planning and zoning. And one of my primary duties is to regulate all the non-metallic mines within Marathon County. Before you is AB 319, which does relate to non-metallic mining, specifically asphalt and concrete batch plants that are located within existing non-metallic mines. What the bill says in a nutshell is once the mining operation is done and reclaimed, if the batch plant is going to remain, that remaining batch plant is not subject to the county's reclamation ordinance. So a lot of times a mine site starts up, a batch plant is going to be part of that mine site. The mine site is exhausted of its materials, but they still want the batch plant there to be utilized as a batch plant. And if the mine site's reclaimed, then the batch plant can remain as a standalone batch plant and not be under the regulations of a non-metallic mine site. This really doesn't impact the county much as I see it. Those sites, those batch plants, if they're in a county-zoned town, would fall under the purview of zoning anyway. Once the mine site itself is reclaimed to a reasonable land use, I don't see any reason why the batch plant couldn't remain operational if a company or entity wanted to keep it there. It's right now that bill is currently in the assembly. To the best of our knowledge, they just received the fiscal estimate on it, but that's where it stands.
So I guess my question would be if you're saying that once they go to the reclamation process that they're not subject to the county's reclamation code, or
once the mine site itself is closed.
Yep.
So yeah, once it's deemed closed, then and it meets vegetative standards, sloping standards, etc., and they don't want to pay fees on it anymore, we can close out that mining permit. but this bill would allow for that area that would be remaining as a batch plant to remain and not have to be reclaimed. So kind of as statute's written right now, if an asphalt batch plant is part of a mine site and they want to reclaim the entire mine site, they have to get rid of the batch plant, reclaim the site, then bring the batch plant back in, which is it's kind of asinine. So this, I think, is a remedy to that. I think there may be, because each county regulates mine sites slightly differently, I believe this is probably, there's a hang-up somewhere in other counties regarding this issue.
Okay.
This bill was brought forth by Representative David Armstrong from Rice Lake area. So, just so you know.
Okay. Supervisor Shafinsky.
So, a question, help me understand. So you have a mine site with a batch plant. It exists. Then the mine itself is no longer operational. It's reclaimed. Batch plant stays, materials transported in, products transported out. At some point, that batch plant's going to be decommissioned. Who presently has the regulatory authority over that decommissioning and reclamation of that batch plant in its specific close-in site, if you will? And then how would this bill change that? What happens when that particular facility reaches its end of service life and they say, okay, shut the whole thing down? How does this impact that?
It could potentially impact that, but I don't think it would be anything different than, let's say, a factory that was operational and then the factory decided to pull up roots and move somewhere else. Right now, as it stands, if that batch plant is part of this reclamation plan, overall reclamation plan and mine site, then it would be the county's purview. What this bill is doing is they're trying to exempt that area from it. We've got a plant similar to this, and I think this is the only one that it could impact on Highway 51 south as you're heading towards Mosinee. On the west side of the road as you're heading south, American Asphalt, Matthew Materials. That's a mine site, but really it's permitted as a mine site. They pay county fees based on it being a mine site, but it's primarily a batch plant and an awfully large one. I think this bill is kind of a workaround for once they reclaim everything and the site is reclaimed, then the batch plant itself wouldn't be subject to reclamation. Now, a site like that, though, I think it still would be, because if in terms of disturbed area, if they're piling materials up and it's fully disturbed yet, then it's not considered reclaimed. If it's still in disturbance. But if all that area around it has been reclaimed to a reasonable land use, reseeded, vegetation has taken hold, except for the batch plant itself and maybe a small surrounding area of where they're stockpiling materials, that area, this bill would exempt it from reclamation, from the reclamation ordinance.
Even though it would have been originally covered.
Correct.
At the
That's
beginning.
my understanding, yes.
That seems to be a rather large loophole, leaving a huge eyesore behind.
Chair Gibbs.
So, Teal, the one thing that if you had a separate batch plant that wasn't attached to a mine site, I think that's the question. What happens then? So the company X decides to stop using the batch plant and it's not, again, first off, it's not attached to a mine, so it's not subject to reclamation. What happens? Who regulates those? It's under zoning, correct?
It's under zoning. It'd be like any other business.
Exactly. Same thing. Same thing happens here.
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else for this one? Okay. 320.
All right. AB 320 is also brought forth by Representative David Armstrong from the Rice Lake area. This bill does potentially significantly impact what goes on in the county here. I believe it is passed the Assembly. It is now brought before the Senate. The Senate has received it. What this bill does, and it's a bit confusing because it's referencing a number of other, Chapter 30, NR 340, going back and talking about certain exemptions. What this bill talks about is our non-metallic mine sites within 500 feet of a navigable water that are not connected to the navigable water body. All right, they're within 500 feet. Currently, as it stands, those non-metallic mine sites fall under the DNR's purview, okay, under NR 340 and Chapter 30. They're exempt from, because they fall under NR 340, Chapter 30, they're exempt from the county's reclamation ordinance because the DNR takes care of it. What I believe this bill does is it removes that exemption, and now those sites would fall under our jurisdiction and no longer the DNR's. And this is how it was explained to me by DNR staff. That's how I read it, and then I gained clarity from DNR staff. So as I understand it, all the mine sites that are to be a pond within 500 feet of a navigable water body that are under the DNR's jurisdiction presently would no longer fall under the DNR's jurisdiction under NR 340 and would become the county's jurisdiction under our reclamation ordinance and NR 135. To the best of my knowledge, I think that would be approximately 30 to 35 sites is my best estimate. Currently under our jurisdiction, under the county's watchful eye, are about 120 non-metallic mine sites. This would add another 30 to 35 mine sites to that list. Now, the good thing is that NR 135 allows for the county to charge fees to pay for the program and charge fees in up to covering the cost of the program 100%. So that's good. So any additional staff time, fees would be incurred by the mine operators to cover the program 100%.
Could I ask a quick question there?
Yeah.
So the DNR was already administering this. Well, I mean, they are currently administering this until this is signed into law.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
I'm guessing a DNR isn't going to reduce their budget any just because they're going to stop doing this, are they?
Your guess is as good as mine, but I would say your guess is good.
Okay, continue.
So yeah, that's kind of where it is. This bill actually does, I think, have the potential to streamline things for operators. Right now, we deal with some sites that are split jurisdictions. So you've got the pond area, and right now the DNR operates under a legal opinion that they only need to legally cover the pond. And what is the pond? Up to the ordinary high water mark. So let's say it's a 40-acre site and they've dug down and they've got 5 acres of pond, but the entire site is 40 acres and the rest of it is all disturbed. They only have the financial assurance and jurisdiction on that 5-acre pond area. Whereas if it were moved into the county jurisdiction, we would legitimately hold the 40 acres under proper financial assurance and charge the appropriate fees for the amount of disturbance and avoid also any split jurisdictions between, all right, this site is half DNR, this site's half, it's kind of a headache for the operators as well, so.
Supervisor Stravinsky?
Yes, I'm having trouble following where you're going with this, particularly in relation to paragraph 2 on the front page.
Oh boy.
That seems to have a very different direction.
Okay, what are you hearing?
Well, what I'm reading here is under current law, generally no person may construct or enlarge an artificial body of water that is within 500 feet of an ordinary high water mark, but is not connected with an existing navigable waterway. Construction of a unconnected artificial body of water. This bill provides that this prohibition does not apply if the construction of the unconnected artificial body is for the purpose of non-metallic mining. That's not what you've been describing at all. You're talking about permitting. This seems to be a completely different description on what is or is not allowable in terms of construction of a pond. You know, maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
Feels at top of the second page. The current DNR administrative rules relate to non-metallic mining apply to all non-metallic mining sites. And then sites that are subject to certain DNR waterway permits are exempt. Bill removes the exemption for non-metallic mining sites for construction of an unconnected artificial water body first.
Right, and then it removes the exemption. So right now, this is a confusing one. So I think there's an exemption from NR 135, which is the county jurisdiction. So if it removes that exemption, it means they're no longer exempt from NR 135 and come under its purview. So if an exemption is removed, there's no longer an exemption.
Well, the first part of that paragraph is a heading. Under current law generally, no person may construct or enlarge an artificial water body that is within 500 feet of the ordinary high water mark of, but not connected with an existing navigable waterway. So they're prohibited from being within that 500 feet. Or did the Legislative Reference Bureau not put together this?
I think that verbiage is allowing for, I think it's allowing for non-metallic mining. So it's, right, I know, yeah, great timing. I think it's allowing for non-metallic mining so that the things below it can come into effect, right? So a Chapter 30 or NRC, and I'm not super familiar with Chapter 30 NR 340 because it's DNR purview. I never really had to deal with it. I just have to know what their jurisdiction is and then hand it off to them. But those permits are only good for 8 years, and they're for essentially creating a pond, is my understanding. And non-metallic mining sort of fit into that. But what the problem the DNR is trying to address is because those permits are very, very short-lived and the mine sites are very, very long-lived, they're trying to address that. So I think through that verbiage, talking about now it's allowing for non-metallic mining, I think they threw that in there so that they can now remove the exemptions and put them under county purview.
To clarify some of this, are you able to contact the DNR person and just have them provide an email with a summary of the potential impact and then forward it to the committee? Would that be a possibility?
I have tried.
Okay.
Now, getting the DNR to write anything down and stick to it is tricky.
Okay.
I can try again.
Okay.
I've got I believe I have a position letter from the DNR that might add some clarity, but I'll have to look for that and get it to the committee.
I guess your other option would be to talk with Mike or the Corp Counsel office, and if this is your understanding, just confirm it with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have, don't get me wrong, this is complicated. Like I get what you're saying. It might help to have more heads in the room with something like this.
No, and I did talk.
Or to get it straight from the source of the DNR. Oh, yes. Chair Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The big question that I have, if the understanding is correct that we're removing the DNR from their ability to regulate mine sites that are within the 500-foot high water mark and relates that back to county, and we're going to potentially pick up additional 30 mine sites that currently right now are regulated by the DNR that we are not regulating. And now they will fall under our reclamation requirements?
Correct.
And oversight?
Correct.
And what about bonding, as far as our bonding requirements? Where does the DNR currently hold the bonding on those reclamations?
They do, yeah.
So we could then require the additional bonding on those, if this were to go into play, on those additional 30 operators?
Yeah, we require bonding on all sites in the county.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, that wouldn't be an issue that they would be grandfathered for
No,
some reason.
absolutely not.
All right.
Okay.
Then would that make it more expensive for the county to take care of that? Because the DNR is not doing it, they're just shifting the enforcement to the county, and you're still under levy limit.
The only
thing is that they're allowing us to charge the costs to the operators, full cost to the operators.
I just want to see that they're being accountable to the taxpayers by reducing their budget by whatever they're not dedicating towards this program. But we'll see if that ever happens. So, all right. Anything else for this one, or we can move to the third one? Okay. Well, we'll get more information from you, Teal, on that one. Okay. All right. Third one, please.
The third one is related to Bill 220 and the Fenwood pilot legislation. So just a quick update. Our staff has gone and presented to the Assembly. They've been asked several questions about the bill, the pilot program. I think overall it's been very well received down in Madison, and we have heard it probably will get a vote in September. So this would be a pilot program that with funding coming to Marathon County to provide additional incentives to farmers who are utilizing best practices or going above and beyond best practices within the Fenwood to protect soil and water health. So I don't have any more details on it right now, except to say that we have been very well received. I think some of you saw there was an article in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel about the pilot program as well. So it seems to be moving forward. We have some indication that at least it'll get a vote this year, which is more than it did last year.
Sure.
So that's good.
Okay. Any
And
questions?
then- go ahead. Yeah.
Any questions for this one? All right. Fourth one, please.
And then similar, I apologize, I ran out of time to get the exact number related to the private on-site wastewater Wisconsin fund, but that has gone through joint finance, so it's still in play here. In terms of bringing the Wisconsin fund back, that is the grant program that would help low-income people receive partial grant funding for failing septic systems. So I think many of you on the committee are familiar with that program. Right now, they're looking at $840,000 a year for years 2023 and 2024, I believe. No, sorry, it'd be 2024 and 2025. We think this obviously continues to be a good thing to have as another tool in our kit to help people with failing systems. Historically, nobody, when they would go for the Wisconsin fund, they would only get partial funding anyways, partial grant funding. There was a cap in terms of how much they could get. So we think it's a good opportunity to sort of marry grant funding with our loan program as well. So they can receive some grant money towards their septic system, and then they could finish the gap with a loan if they needed to. So.
The only thing else, how much does a POUT system cost these days? 20 or 30?
Ads are.
Yeah, depending on the system type, the last numbers I heard, conventional was around 10 to 12. Mound system was around 18 to 25, depending on the size.
So if you do, I don't mean to keep the committee, but if you do, let's say it's 25, right? 25K. So that's 33 and partial for the entire state.
Typically, the Wisconsin Fund, I believe the maximum grant was maybe 7,000 or 7,500 that
Okay.
they would give any one applicant. So, so they're definitely not trying to fund a whole system with any of these. And we haven't seen any specifics on whether or not any of the rules would change with that, but historically, that's the way it's been. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have that program in place for a reason, so. Okay. Any questions for this one? All right. Thank you, staff. 8, next meeting, June 27, 2023, 3 p.m., Assembly Room, future agenda items. A,
That is actually an error. The next meeting is August 1st.
July.
So, no,
All right.
that is our error. It is on the agenda. So.
What is it, Lori?
It is August 1st.
August
so
1st.
He is reading it correctly, but it was an error on the agenda. It's August 1st, 2023,
Yeah.
3 p.m. in the Assembly Room.
I'd be an awful newscaster, right? I wouldn't read, I just keep reading what's. August 1st, first day of fair? All right, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, announcements, requests, correspondence. The only thing I'll add, happy 4th of July. Hopefully you all get a second to appreciate, the wonderful country that we live in the next, in the next week. So, thank you all for being at ERC today. All right. Number 9. Motion to adjourn by Seafeld, second by Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thanks again, everybody.